Hello and welcome once again to the DMCA Chess Academy. This is chess coach Ritesh Mathew, and today I'm going to show you a very nasty chess trap called the Blackburne Shilling Gambit. And you play this from the black side. So if white plays a certain kind of opening, you can try this nice trap on him. So the move order goes like this. White opens with the king pawn e4. And if you're playing black, you can play the e5 and stop the pawn. Now both the pawns are not protected, king pawns. When you play two steps, both the pawns are not protected. So white strikes the black pawn first. So white is like, hey, black, I'm attacking this pawn. Do you want to save it? So black is like, of course, yes. So black brings out his knight, develops the knight and saves the pawn right now. Now here white continues with bishop to c4. This is called the Italian game. Now here black can shock and surprise his opponent and breaking an opening rule. One of the opening rules is not to move the same piece twice unless it is necessary. So here black is saving this pawn, but black is going to ignore the pawn and put the knight to d4. This is called the Blackburne Shilling Gambit. Now whenever you hear the word gambit in chess, it means that somebody's giving away a free pawn. Alright, so here black was protecting the pawn, the knight was protecting the pawn on e5, but black is like, I don't care about the pawn, you can capture it if you want. And here white falls for the trick, and white takes the pawn. And also the knight and bishop both are ganging up on the weakest pawn, f7 pawn, which is guarded only once by the black king. So white thinks like it's a very bad move from black, and he goes ahead and he captures the gambited pawn on e5, thereby double attacking the f7. Now whenever you learn and practice the opening traps, I always tell all my students in my academy that try not to memorize moves, because trying to memorize moves is futile, and there are so many moves, possible moves in chess. So it's very, very futile to memorize all the moves. So I coach my students and tell them that they should always look at the features and characteristics of any position instead of memorizing any move order. So the typical characteristics of this position, Blackburne Shilling Gambit, is white's knight on e5 is not protected, white's pawn on e4 is not protected, and white's g2 pawn is not protected. So always remember these features in the Blackburne Shilling Gambit. With that said, black will go ahead and make the strongest move here, attacking the knight and the pawn at the same time. So he will move his queen here, and he will attack the pawn and the knight. Well, earlier, going back one move, earlier another benefit of knight capturing this pawn is there is a fork on the rook and the queen. Alright, so here black brings the queen out and attacks the g2 pawn and the e5 knight. Here white is thinking, wait a second, I thought I was going to attack the pawn and fork the queen and the rook and win the rook. But here black moved the queen, but queen is still in line of the fork. So white is like, wait a second, I can still fork the rook and the queen. So white gets a little too excited and makes this final blunder by capturing the f7 pawn. Alright, so here white is done. Black can go ahead and continue and capture this pawn on g2 as he has planned. Now here what white will think is, hey, wait a second, this knight is protected, my knight is protected by the bishop. This is how white will think. So, and then the rook is trapped inside, the rook cannot escape anywhere. So white will think, wait a second, black rook is already in my shopping cart, black rook is not going to run away anywhere, and black cannot save the rook. But right now black is attacking my rook. So white will think like, why should I give up my rook? I can wait capturing this rook. So white will try to save the rook first. And if he saves the rook, you know the features of the Blackburne Shilling. Remember, the e4 pawn is also hanging along with the e5 knight and g2 pawn. So remembering that structure and feature, black here can capture the pawn and give a check to the king, white king. Over here, surprisingly, there are only two possible moves. Either white can block the check with the queen, or white can block the check with the bishop. So obviously white will think, why should I block it with my queen when the knight is guarding the e2 square, black knight? So here white will fear losing the queen, right? So he's like, okay, let me block it with the bishop then. And you can pause the video over here for a few seconds and find the final blow black will give to white. And it's pretty much game over. Well, if you found this move, knight to e3 is checkmate. Wow, look at that. And in chess, this kind of checkmate is called the smothered mate. Smothered means king is surrounded by his own pieces and king cannot escape with the knight checking the king. Now king cannot escape. And of course, the white bishop cannot capture the knight because bishop is pinned to the king. So if bishop moves, it will be a check to the white king. So bishop cannot capture. So a very textbook example of the Blackburne Shilling Gambit. If white falls for the trap, then this is the main line of Blackburne Shilling. Now let me show you a few variations. What if your opponent who is playing white will make some other move? So over here, instead of thinking like, hey, why should I capture my rook? Why should I capture black's rook? Why shouldn't I first save my own rook and then capture the black rook? Instead of that, what if white just goes ahead and captures your rook, right? Well, here again, black can capture this white rook and give a check. Now, surprisingly, this e2 square is cut off by the knight, black knight. So the only possible way white can save this check is by blocking it with his own bishop. So again, you remember the features. The e4 pawn is hanging. So always remember these features whenever you learn an opening trap. So when the bishop blocks, queen captures the e4 pawn and gives a check over here. So obviously, again, there are only two options for white. Either the bishop can block or the queen can block. And again, if the queen blocks, knight is controlling the e2. So white doesn't want to lose the queen. So he blocks it with the bishop. Now here there are a couple of ways black can continue. A better way to continue is bring the bishop to the c5 square. Now here I will cover maybe one or two variations. What if white attacks the queen and tries to open up the dark square bishop? Well, in that case, you can again give a check to the king, right? And again, the bishop cannot capture because bishop is pinned to the king. So obviously bishop cannot capture and king cannot escape to the d2 square because knight is cutting off the d2. So if the king goes to f1, then now you can put your queen to h4 and again threaten the in-your-face checkmate, right? So if the king comes to g2, then you can capture this f2, right? And now the king can only go to h3 square. And here king is in line of this bishop. So all you can do is just move this pawn and it's checkmate. So that's what if they attack the queen over here. The pawn attacks the queen is one variation. If the knight attacks the queen, you repeat the same move order. You can give a check and again they have to move their king and then you can bring the queen to h4 and this is pretty much all over for white. This is pretty much a lost game. So that's another variation. So bishop coming to c5 is a much better move, but also here you can capture this pawn with the knight and give a check. That's another variation. That will be a little longer game, so it's your choice however you want to continue. But here if the knight captures and gives a check, there are only two possible moves for white to get rid of the check. Either the queen captures the knight or the king moves to f1. And obviously both of them will lead to either checkmate or loss of queen. That's the beauty of Blackburne Shilling Gambit. Either you're going to lose the queen or you're going to get checkmated if white falls for your tricks. So here obviously if the queen captures the knight, then white loses the queen. So the second variation, if king goes to f1, then obviously queen can go to h1, and this is a queen side shot checkmate. So that's the second variation I wanted to show you. Let's move on to the third variation. After white falls for your gambited pawn on e5, he captures it with the knight, and again they're double attacking this. And when you bring out your queen, instead of capturing the f7 with the knight, what if white captures it with the bishop over here? Well, here black can continue with king to d8, and white will most likely castle over here, okay, and this knight will fall. So again, this is okay. Black can continue. If the bishop captures, then black can move the king to d8 and continue the game in this manner. And then finally I want to show you, what if you're playing from the white side, and what if after the Italian game black shocks you with knight to d4 and black tries to apply the Blackburne Shilling Gambit on you. Then the easiest way to continue is, instead of capturing the gambited pawn, if you're playing white, you can just capture this knight, and then obviously black will recapture it, and you can continue over here with if you're playing white, you can continue with either castling, or you can probably move the d3 pawn and release the dark square bishop, develop the dark square bishop, and game can continue like this. So not a whole lot of players know about this Blackburne Shilling Gambit opening trap. So you can, once in a while, you can surprise your opponent and use and try this trick on your opponent. So I hope you like this trap. Do like and subscribe to my channel Chess Melody for more chess and music related videos. So goodbye and thank you very much, and please watch this trap and learn it and apply it on your opponents. Thank you so much.